On this show, we've bemoaned France's anemic growth. Well, you can call it cold comfort, but over in London, the Chancellor of the Exchequer this Wednesday forecasting the UK economy would shrink by 0.1% this year as he unveiled more belt tightening, most notably fewer tax breaks for wealthy pensioners and a cap on welfare payments. The size of government will also shrink slightly. Meanwhile, over in Paris, the socialist government is busy trying to talk itself out of a corner after last week's one-off threat to nationalize an ArcelorMittal blast furnace in eastern France. That's not going to happen, but the politicians have been meeting with trade unionists, pledging to save jobs. A sea of difference between the way on this side of the channel and that over the role of government in the face of Europe's worst crisis in a decade. Resentment, in any case, between Britain and the continent over the role of government in solving this crisis, boiling over to Brussels, where many see banking union negotiations as a way of bringing business that's traded in euros out of the City of London and under the watch of EU regulators. Today in the France 24 debate, the Franco-British divide over austerity. And with us to talk about it from London, Conservative Member of Parliament Bill Cash. Welcome back to the debate. Welcome to French Socialist MP Philippe Cordery, who'll be joining us from Brussels. Jean-Paul Pecpez, Chief Economist at French bank Crédit Agricole. And Mark Dean, journalist with Bloomberg News. Welcome, sir. The France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, or hashtag debate. Now, the House of Commons always makes for good drama. Finance Minister's autumn statement, George Osborne's biannual economic policy speech, living up to its promise.
The public know there are no miracle cures, just the hard work of dealing with our deficit and ensuring Britain wins the global race. That work is underway. The deficit is down. Borrowing is down. Jobs are being created. It is a hard road, but we are making progress. And everything we do, we are helping those who want to work hard and get on. Thank you.
What we learned today is that growth has been downgraded this year, next year, the year after, and the year after that too, Mr. Speaker. The longest double-dip recession since the Second World War, now followed by the slowest recovery in the last 100 years.
Now, in that exchange, Osborne pointing to the recession in the Eurozone as a whole as one of the reasons why forecasts have not lived up to their billing, while the Shadow Chancellor said it's not the rest of the world's fault, it's your policies which have failed. Bill Cash, how do you explain the fact that Britain is in recession?
Well, there are a variety of reasons. First of all, because we inherited the most appalling, disastrous economy from the Labour Party, who'd been in government for 13 years and had built up the most monumental amount of debt, which had to be repaid. And the other side of it, in other words, we are, to put it bluntly, we're still having to work our way through the monumental problems that we inherited. But in relation to the question of where we are now, the position regarding the Eurozone is critically important. There are 27 member states. We are running a trade deficit with the other 26 of over £30 billion a year. In fact, it's been considerably more than that, and it probably is nearer 40. However, on the other side of the equation, in relation to our extremely rapidly expanding trade with the rest of the world, with the Commonwealth, with the Americas, with the countries in the emerging markets, we are running a massive surplus of about the same, about 35 billion, which is incredibly good. So when people look at this, and we look at the riots, the strikes, unemployment rates, I mean, today in France, I think it's round about 12%. In Spain, it's 25%. Young people in Spain and Greece under the age of 25, there are 53% unemployed. this European Union, which everyone shouts about as being so great for everything, is actually a walking disaster. And the truth is that you cannot generate growth unless you have really effective small and medium-sized businesses who, from reasonable taxation, are then able to provide the money which pays for public expenditure. Otherwise, all you're doing is simply printing money, which is basically what's going on in Europe at the moment, which is a fraud on the electorate, or you find the money from the growth that is needed. And the policies which are being pursued at the moment, for example, I'm chairman of the European Scrutiny Committee in the House of Commons. I was elected, I'm not appointed. And I led the Maastricht Rebellion back in 1992, 3 and 4. And there is a very big sea change taking place within Britain, as everybody now knows. And the reality is that those things which we predicted in those days have now actually come true.
We'll get back to the point of Britain's relationship with Europe, but I want to get Jean-Paul Betbez in on the discussion here.
And I would like to touch on the City of London as well in a minute. Because
we
will
indeed, Bill Cash. Jean-Paul Betbez, just in terms of Bill Cash's analysis there of why it is that the UK is still in recession. France, by the way, anemic growth, but growth nonetheless?
Yeah, well, it's flat. Basically, it's flat, and next year maybe it will be, modestly positive. We all know that we are, in a very, very problematic, situation. And everything is done to have collectively within the Eurozone something that would be positive. My understanding is that as far as the economic crisis is concerned, the worst is over. And the worst was in July this year when Mr. Draghi said, I will do whatever it takes, the euro is irreversible. And since this moment, we see, in my mind, something very, very important concerning growth and concerning the feeling of the markets. People have the idea that concerning Spain, they will ask what they have done this week. They will ask for help, and everything is ready for them. On one side, coming from the states, and coming from the central bank, the European Central Bank, everything is done as well, and everything is prepared as well. So my understanding is that we are preparing something that would be, of course, modest, but a sort of gradual recovery. It will take time, but of course it will be, in my mind, gradual and rather positive. Concerning what I heard concerning the idea that we are printing money in Euroland, I would say that I am very surprised, because I would say that on the opposite, there is printing, the Bank of England is printing money, and we are not supposed to do it. Okay, so it's not exactly the situation as I see it. So to
certainly easier under the statutes for the UK.
It is not possible to do it in Euroland, and on the contrary, it is done on a massive scale in the United Kingdom. But everyone does his job. But as far as the Eurozone is concerned, my understanding is that the worst is over as far as finance is concerned. But we have something very problematic and very complex, which is industry, which is competitiveness, which is productivity, which is, let us say, real growth. And this is what we have to do now.
All right, let's just touch one last time on those numbers on growth for the UK. They've come in under forecast. There was a bump in the third quarter, attributed in part to London hosting the Olympics. That brought in a lot of people. And growth for 2013, originally billed at 2%, now revised down to 1.2%. I suppose if we're going to have a bragging contest between the UK and France over growth, neither side is going to do very well.
That's a nice way to put it. I think that, the funny thing is that, much of this is politics. The British government talks a very good game in terms of austerity and is constantly selling its austerity effort. And the French government actually is moving towards austerity in the sense of a severe fiscal tightening. But you'll never you can put a gun to a French politician's head and he will not utter the word austerity because it's politically not sellable in France. But the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, as Jean-Paul was saying, the French economy is essentially flat, has remained positive, so far. The British economy, has been just slightly negative this year. I mean, it really splitting hairs, frankly, in terms of what that really means. But both economies have and both governments have a struggle to do in getting down the deficit and returning to growth.
We can welcome now French Socialist MP Philippe Cordery, who joins us from Brussels, which is your home constituency, since you represent the French abroad for Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Thanks for being with us. So, Philippe Cordery, can you say the word austerity?
Well, I can say the word austerity and link it to the UK policy. But I think François Hollande, since he won the election in June, has a much more balanced approach, which is, of course, having balanced budgets, and no one contests that. But in the addition to having balanced budget, having also growth policy and help to have a more competitive economy. And that's the proposals that have been put forward by the government on the national level and on the European level. Because it means that the austerity policy that has been led in the European Union in the past years has been a disaster. Unemployment has been rising, especially youth unemployment. And today we need this growth approach, which has been mentioned in the debate, an industrial policy in Europe, but also investments, because if we don't have investments, we're not going to regain this growth path. This is why this Growth and Employment Pact was adopted by the European Council in June. This is also why in France we have created and we voted the creation last week of a public investment bank to be able to guarantee loans to small and medium enterprises so that they can invest on the market and create growth in order to create employment and move out of the recession.
All right. There is, by the way, in the UK going to be infrastructure spending along with those cuts. I should just point out, though, for people who don't follow UK politics closely, the opposition press this morning was waiting for George Osborne when the day began. Guardian readers woke up to front-page accusations that he's, in fact, reducing National Health Service spending in England and has failed to curb government spending, while the Independent headlines that for Osborne, growth means 13,000 job cuts in civil service, with a cartoon where Osborne shows off his briefcase, which is in fact, as you can see, an axe that he's taking to government services. By the way, it's not just the left-wing papers that like having a go at the Chancellor of the Exchequer. This Adams cartoon, courtesy of the Daily Telegraph. New Scout promise, it says, fib, fib, fib. And Bill Cash, let me ask you this question, because it's hard for us to understand outside of the UK. Why is George Osborne such a polarizing figure?
I don't really know, actually, and I don't think anybody else does. I think he has had a reputation for being rather sort of brusque. Because he's a baronet, I think that sets off some of the left-wing papers in rather a bad way. A baronet is an inherited title. But basically, it's very difficult to understand. What is really important, however, is that in the autumn statement, this mini-budget today, there were some very important elements at the end. I ought to declare my position. I'm not a Keynesian. I don't really believe that you can spend money on public works and perform miracles. I think what you really have to do is to deregulate, reduce the strangulation of small businesses' red tape, generate profits through the small and medium-sized businesses, not only in Britain but throughout the whole of Europe, and then tax the profits reasonably. But you see, what he did at the end of the statement today was actually much more conservative. Remember, we are in a coalition, and that's a very uneasy relationship, I can tell you. There are a lot of Conservatives, and I'm one of them, who really doesn't like the coalition at all. Basically, at the end of his statement, he had a lot of very important things to say, about tax breaks for manufacturing in terms of capital allowances and things like that, relief from local taxation, increasing the opportunity for more growth by building and things like that. So basically, what's happening is that the government is getting the message, which is that if you want to generate growth, it's not just spending public money. It's actually about generating, and I think the same ought to apply throughout Europe. But the trouble is that we're hamstrung by things like the Working Time Directive, by a lot of the health and safety measures, and a lot of red tape, which prevents the businesses of Europe from taking off.
All right, let me put the question here to Mark Dean. George Osborne, when he comes to the Commons and says, I'm going to tighten belts, we've seen the latest polling figures. If there was a snap election, Labour would outdistance the Conservatives by a fairly wide margin. That message of tough love, he's still persisting with it, though.
Well, I mean, polls also show that, you know, people in the UK, as in fact people in France, are in favour of having the deficit cut. Of course, it's always a different thing when it comes down to someone's lunch being taken away. I'm speaking metaphorically, but I think it's important to keep in mind that polls change once an election is called. The UK isn't close to an election right now, and if there was to be an election 3 months from now, I think things might look a little different. Although, the polls are what they are.
Philip Cordery, is George Osborne showing bravery by telling the voters when he stands up there in the Commons that yes, there's going to have to be more belt tightening? Is that just honesty on his part?
I don't know if it's honesty, but it's not the right direction. And I heard what Mr. Cash was saying, but this policy has been a disaster for the UK, a disaster on the economic level. I mean, the IMF in its report in October has sort of diminished the growth perspectives for the UK from 2% to 1.2%, which is costing 76 billion to the UK economy. And if you look at the social, because the Working Time Directive and all these social measures enable the workers in the UK to have good living standards. And if they want to deregulate the whole economy, then the people will be living in even worse conditions. And if that's what Mr. Osborne and the majority want for the UK, then I can understand that people are fed up.
All right, that's the situation as it's playing out right now in the UK. When we come back in the France 24 debate, we're going to look at the role of government in solving the problem here in France. Stay with us. It's the France 24 debate.